Ambition! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. This is Tiffany and
Alex, hello. And we've got a guest with us today. We've got the fabulous Anouk Knuffmann. Managed to get that non-silent K out there properly. She's an economic graduate. She's got a background of working in business development and is now a successful entrepreneur. And she's also, what we're going to talk about today, a money and investing coach. So she's on a mission to teach busy women how to passively invest their money, to grow their wealth, and to remove the fear and overwhelm that women can feel around that type of money advice and investing. She's lived in several different countries and she's now based in Barcelona, which we're very jealous of at Ambition today because it is raining where we are. And she's a mother of one, most importantly. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hello. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so, it's really great to see you.
Yeah, amazing. So let's get started then. I think a great place to start is to understand when you experienced, or series of moments, because it might not have been one, that you experienced this shift in how you look at money.
I love that question. There are definitely multiple moments. And actually, even though I'm now working as an investment and money coach and helping women to, get through this and create their own strategies and build wealth, I still even have these moments now. So it's not something that just goes away. I think it's just like a continuous journey. And I think, the first shift that happened was obviously when I went from being employed to being self-employed, because suddenly there was I was responsible for my own income. I didn't have the safe salary anymore coming into my bank account. So I had to make sure that, I take care of my finances in a completely different way as before. I had to start doing everything differently and being a bit more mindful of how I'm spending my money, how I'm saving my money. And that's also where I started to look into investing, because I had to then take care of my own retirement. So I kind of started changing the way I look at money there. So before, I would say I completely ignored the topic of money. It was just something. I had a job, I would get my monthly salary. It was fine. The money comes in, I don't have to care about it. And then when I became self-employed, suddenly there was this big shift, and suddenly there was this thing of okay, wow, I need to actually put a strategy in place so that I don't go through my income as soon as I receive it. And then, I don't know, especially when you're self-employed, you have inconsistent income, right? So you have to plan for multiple months. There's just much more involved. And then I think the other very big shift happened when I fell pregnant. And when I started to have even before having my baby, basically, I think it was also the very first time that I realized I'm actually scared financially, even though I was already in a very comfortable position financially and I had my investments in place. I had my savings in place. I even have a rental property that I own. But still, suddenly having this pregnancy and knowing, okay, there's going to be someone who's dependent on me, just changed everything. It just shifted the whole energy around money. It just made me even more aware of how careful I need to be, how I need to now provide for someone else as well. Obviously I have a partner, but then it's just still, it was just this load. It was for both of us in the relationship as well. It was so many changes. And then, just realizing that also the cost that comes with the baby, just things that you don't necessarily consider at first, they just come up. So there's just lots of things that change once you have that added responsibility, basically. So I think those are the biggest ones that came to mind now, or the most trivial ones in the last few years.
Yeah, I can totally empathize with how the pressure changes when you become a mother, and all of those hidden costs that you just weren't expecting. For me, even the amount that I spend on fruit now is astronomical, things I would never have expected. But what I'm really interested in is investing seems to be something that a lot of women are afraid of. And I'm interested in what the barriers are and why you've become so passionate about sort of particularly working with women on this.
Yeah. So, I think it's because we've never learned it. If we think about it, so if we look at the UK as an example, women are only allowed to own their bank accounts for 50 years now. And 50 years is not a very long time for, being in charge of your money. So learning how to start investing and all of that, that came later. So it's actually a very short time span if you think about it. So I think that's one of the things. And then we just grew up with this image of like the man takes care of the finances, the woman is the one who's at home, and now this is shifting, and now it's changing into we actually have to take care of our own money if we don't want to be dependent on whether it's a job or a relationship. Doesn't mean that you know, like you can be in a happy relationship, but you should still be independent as an individual, financially especially, because you never know how things turn out, right? And it doesn't have to be just a divorce. It can also be that your partner deceases and then you're there by yourself. You don't know how to do what to do with the money. So it's just, yeah, that's one of the reasons why you really have to take care of it. Another one is there's so many gaps that we have throughout our life. One is having a baby. It's just like you have this gap of work, right? You have a certain time frame where you're not working, so you have less income. So that automatically, there's a ripple effect, and that automatically impacts your retirement income as well, because you're not, in that moment, you're usually not paying into your retirement. So even if you feel like, okay, it's only 4 months, or it's only 6 months, or it's only a year that you take off, that can be multiple thousands that are going to be missing later on during your retirement. So that's something that you have to make up for with investing. And then in general, the whole retirement system is changing, right? Like how it's been built and what we are going to be receiving is completely different. Like we're not having as many babies anymore. We are growing much older. So automatically we need more money when we get older, which we can't get from the government because they don't have the finances to support us. So we have to support ourselves. And the easiest way to do that is through investing. So the easiest way to take care of your own finances and to take care of your own retirement and to make sure that you actually can maintain your cost of living and your lifestyle. It's not even about living extremely rich when you're like old. It's just actually what you need to do is you need to start investing so that you can even get the basics. Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to even afford the basics. And that's kind of like, yeah, the importance
I love that. I love that, Anouk, and I think what I'm really getting from this is this idea that we all have assumptions about money, and often they're wrong or misplaced, or and I mean, for example, I've recently been reading Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
I
And
love that.
what I'm really, yeah, and what I'm really getting from that is this idea that a lot of when we look at money, it's psychological, it's emotional, it's not logical or rational. So if we can address those basic kind of psychological assumptions that we have, then perhaps we can move forward with confidence and with the right knowledge. So I'd be interested to know a couple or a few of your kind of assumptions or myths that people have about money, or women specifically, that doesn't serve them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a very common one, and a lot of us have it probably, or a lot of women have it, is this feeling of like, I'm not good with money, right? And I recently saw a video and it was so fitting. It was basically, if you think of driving, you have never learned how to drive. You wouldn't be saying I'm not good at driving. You would just be saying I've never learned to drive. But with money, somehow we have this idea of like, I'm not good with money. I can't do money. Like it's not for me, whatever. When actually you have just never learned how to manage your money. You've just never learned how to behave around money. You've just never learned how money works. So that's why. So it's kind of like shifting from, immediately blaming ourselves. And that's just the conditioning. That's just how that's just society. And that's how we grow up. And that's how, all the stories we hear. But it's basically shifting from that to actually realizing, okay, it's not my fault that I'm not good with it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not good with it. It just means I haven't learned it, and I can actually learn it. And I can just have to know a few things, and then I can shift it, and I can actually get good with money. So that's one of the ones. Also in line with that is like, I don't know how to save. I can't save. Investing is not for me. I don't have enough money to invest. I don't have enough time to invest. That's a very very, very common one. And I love that one because especially for me now, being a mom, having a business, having a relationship, like having friends, I have no time either, but I still manage to invest because there's ways to invest in a very passive way where you don't actually need a lot of time. And then, I think also one like investing is for men, or I it's everything around that basically, like leaving the finances to the man or male part of the relationship, just because you don't trust yourself with it or you don't feel like it's for you.
Sounds
Yeah.
like there's some issues with confidence around that as well, that maybe some of those things of I can't do it, I'm not very good at it, stem from that lack of confidence. And I think that analogy about you wouldn't say, oh, I'm not very good at driving before you've had a lesson. That makes total sense. I really like how you
Or you could have
framed
had
that.
lots of lessons like me and still not be able to drive. That's another. But yeah, we won't go into that.
What I was thinking as you were talking there was, I don't want you to give away all of your secrets and tips, because I know that
you gotta pay people. You got to pay.
yeah, I know as well that you have the 7-day free course where you can learn to invest, which I've signed up for and think is really great. And you did the investing masterclass, which I really enjoyed as well, and that's really fired me up. But really, I think one of the things that I think one of the myths that you've talked about there around women not understanding or like not knowing about how much time and how to set it up so it's passive and you actually don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. And what are the kind of first steps to get into that?
Look into index funds. That's what I can say. It's really so if for anyone who has no idea what an index fund is, who has never heard the term index fund, you can think of it as a bucket of companies. So rather than choosing one single company to invest in, you choose a bucket of companies, which can be thousands at the same time. And through that, you automatically reduce your risk. You reduce your time involvement because you don't have to go ahead and pick all these different companies. You just choose the one, which is called an ETF, exchange traded fund, and you invest in that. And then, just through this system, it's basically removing the kind of like fear around making the right decision with the one single company. And what's really interesting as well, when we look at statistics, actually passive investors, which means someone who invests in index funds, are usually more successful than active investors, because the likelihood of you finding this kind of like needle in the haystack that is going to be successful is highly unlikely. So finding that one company that does very well, finding the 5 companies that do very well is really, really hard to do. It takes a lot of time. It also requires a lot of nerve, because you need to really, you have to stick with your decision. You have to make sure that you can weather the movements of the market and you don't pay and you don't sell when the markets are down. Now, when you do passive investing and you invest in multiple companies, the movements are already less. I can give you an example. I have single stocks in my portfolio and I have ETFs in my portfolio. A single stock can lose 15 to 20 to 30% in a day. An ETF usually doesn't do that. It moves a tiny little bit and then it moves up again. It can also, obviously it depends, but then if an ETF moves down this much, it means the entire market moves down that much. And that already gives you a bit more confidence, because you can see that it's the same everywhere. It's not this one decision that you made. It's just how the market is right now. That's the situation right now, and it's going to go up again, because that's what has always happened in history. And I think that's also actually one of the myths, is kind of like you can lose money in the stock market, or investing is gambling. That's my favorite one, actually.
Okay.
Because that's so wrong. It's just that when we think about that, like when we say investing is gambling, it's more like, if anyone has watched The Wolf of Wall Street, it's kind of like that's what you think about. So it's these like day traders that make really drastic moves, that have to, go ahead and find the single companies and move really quickly and be behind their computer all the time. And when you do that, yes, it's very risky, and yes, you can lose money. But when you follow a passive investing strategy that matches your risk profile, so also you understand kind of like, okay, how much do you actually want to invest in equities, meaning in stocks? How much do you want to invest in something that's maybe a bit more low risk? And then you match that and you create your portfolio this way. There's very little that can happen to you, basically. So if you look at like history, and if ever you're unsure about your investments and you look back and you look at like the last 100 years, or even last 20 years or last 15 years, you will see it will always go up. So it's kind of like zooming out, not looking at like the last year or the last month or the next month, but just zooming out, looking at the stock market as a whole and realizing that actually overall the graph goes up.
So you could just be putting money into one of these funds and leaving it alone and rarely even having to check on it, and you'd still be over time just making money.
Yes. Yeah. It obviously depends which one you choose, because there's differences as well. Like there are up to 8,000 at the moment, I think, globally. You might not have access to all of them because it depends on where you live, but there are lots of different ETFs to choose from. So what you want to make sure is that when it comes to ETFs, you also want to make sure you diversify, because some ETFs, for example, could only focus on a specific country, or they focus on a specific niche. So for example, you can invest in one that only focuses on AI or on tech or on health, or even luxury brands. And then there are ETFs that focus on the entire world, or ETFs that focus only on emerging markets. So there's like very different types of ETFs. So there's a bit of a strategy behind that in terms of like how do you put together the portfolio, which ETFs to choose. But once you have figured that out and you set up your investments, and ideally you set up an automated investment plan where you invest on a monthly basis, really not much can happen, because you're going to be buying every single month. So whenever the market goes down, you're going to buy a bit more automatically because you have the same amount, but obviously you get more for the money that you're spending.
Oh, like a sale.
Exactly. Yes. And when the market goes up, you buy a bit less, but then over time it just balances itself out. And yeah, if you're in it for the long term, there's really not much that can happen.
Okay. I've been thinking a bit about because I knew you dropped some truth bombs on social media, right? About money. And I was like, we have to bring this up. Money is time, and not like time is money, which is the typical phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, your money can literally buy you freedom. Another one, spoiler alert, there is no shortcut, no quick fix, no magic trick to becoming good at this. It takes self-awareness, smart moves, and patience. And you're talking about how money is about giving you choices and independence. And I'm really interested in that. I mean, I suppose a couple of, I'd love to hear you elaborate on that, but also perhaps think of, are there any books or people that talk about money that perhaps you've listened to over time that helps you to develop that sort of, I suppose, modern way of looking at money?
Yeah, I have my whole house is full of books.
I can imagine. I was going to say, feel free to drop us a list later as well. Yeah, you don't have to remember everything now. I was going to say that you probably have a lot.
but yeah, I have a few that I can mention that I love. And so one controversial one, or one book that is talking about money from a very different perspective is called Die with Zero, the book, and it's by Bill Perkins. And when I read the title, I was like, why the heck would anyone want to die with zero? Like, meaning no money in your bank account. So his goal is to get to the end of your life and have no money left. And then immediately I was like, that's just insane. Like, what am I doing all my life if I end my life with no money in my bank account? But then what he's saying, and it makes so much sense, and it was just like this light bulb moment. What he's saying is that you don't want to be sitting, at the end of your life, sitting on this pile of money and then not having the energy to spend it anymore. So you want to find a way to spend the money throughout your life while still securing a future that feels safe and secure. So basically the balance between spending your money now and securing your future. And he talks a lot about spending on experiences versus spending on materialistic things, because experiences pay much more. He talks about something called the memory dividend. And basically what he's saying is that when you have an experience and you spend money on that experience, you create a memory, and that memory creates dividends or pays dividends.
Wow.
A dividend is basically, when you think of investing, it's what a company pays out to their shareholders as a bonus for owning their shares. It's when they don't need to reinvest into the company because they've made enough money and they now pay it out to, the shareholders. Now, he talks about this from the perspective of experiences and the memory dividend. And that for me was really like, one of the biggest shifts, because what I didn't realize is, okay, I looked back at my life and what I've done. And there was one experience, for example, where I went on an amazing trip. So I did a 3-month co-living experience in Namibia, which was very funny because I had lived in South Africa. I just left South Africa, I moved to Lisbon, and a week later I met a girl who organized a co-living in Namibia. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going back to Africa again in like a few months. And I was there, and we did like an amazing trip through Christmas and New Year's for 2 weeks, where we went traveling through Namibia, basically camping, and Botswana and Zimbabwe. And when we arrived in Zimbabwe, it was kind of this question of like, okay, am I going to do Victoria Falls or not? Because it was not included in the price. And at the time, I was just like, no, I don't want to spend the money. I'm going to come back probably another time. I will just do it then, and I'm going to save the money. Luckily, my friend told me it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I will regret not doing it. I'm even getting goosebumps now. It's like when I talk about this, it was doing these things. I basically then went to do Victoria Falls, went to visit Victoria Falls. I did 1 day there, and it was the best thing of the entire trip. It was just this like the most magical place I'd ever been to. And I was like, I would have almost not done it just because I wanted to save the money. But then for what? To just spend the money on something else that is probably not as meaningful. So, and that's kind of like his concept as well. He's talking about, obviously, you have to spend within your means. You have to, be safe financially, and you have to make sure that you have enough money. But most of us actually have too much money left at the end of our lives. And then we regret not doing more when we were younger. So I think that's one of the biggest, like that's one of the most like eye-opening and kind of like mind-changing books I've read.
That sounds really amazing. And I love the focus on experiences rather than things, because I was thinking while you were talking, who's going to think about, when you're there at the end of your life, you're not going to think, I really loved that car I had back in like 2024, are you? You're not going to think that kind of thing. It depends.
Well, I think it's a balance. I was going to say, I think there's a balance there, though. I think there's it's a balance, isn't it? But just knowing what's important to you, because I think so many people kind of say, look on Instagram, oh, that person's got that bag, I better get that bag. Yeah.
No, it's about understanding yourself, and that's actually my post today was about that. It's all about learning who you are, learning what's important to you, and learning kind of like what kind of life you want to live. And that's something I'm helping my clients with, because it's kind of around using money as a tool to really create the life you want to live, rather than just doing what your neighbor does, or not doing anything because you want to save, or being in this like fear around money all the time and around spending. So it's really understanding yourself. And there's even studies around that basically when you spend money in alignment with your personality traits, you are more satisfied. You're generally more happy. And they look at the big 5 as the personality traits, like the test that you can do. And then they looked at, I think it was 77,000 expenses, and they've matched that to the personality traits. And then they realized that, for example, an extrovert would spend more money on eating out, right? But that would be good for him. Like he would feel satisfied doing that, and he will feel happy. Someone who is more conscientious would maybe spend more money on health and with fitness, as an example. So it's kind of like, just understanding yourself and realizing what's important to you, and not really looking at what's important for everyone else, but just yourself.
Yeah, I think as well, social media does really push us down that rabbit hole, doesn't it, of what other people are doing, what other people are spending on. And I think, that sounds really good of bringing it back to yourself. In terms of women and investing, are women just much more likely to save their money than invest? And they feel like that's kind of the responsible choice.
It feels safer to them, for sure. Definitely. But I would almost also say, I mean, it depends on the woman, but women also like to spend. So it's not just saving, but it's also spending. Like I think we're more materialistic in that sense somehow. But the funny thing is actually that once we start investing, we are the better investors by a many point. But still, it's because we are more risk averse, and we take longer to make a decision, but then we make the decision and we stick with it, rather than men who are more, they just decide on the spot and they just do something more high risk and they just go all in, for example. And women are much more, they're holding back more.
I feel like they're cosplaying the Wolf of Wall Street with those decisions.
Yeah. But yeah, in general, it's obviously like we prefer to save because that's what we know. And usually, like I have some friends who they've not moved, like they're still in my hometown, and they're still in the same bank where they had their first bank account when they were not even 18. You know, they're still staying with the same bank because that's what they know.
Whoa! I've been seen by that.
Yeah.
Since I was 15. She'll be closed. Just
I'll
be radical.
Not a problem.
You'll be radical today. You're gonna leave my bank.
But it's just something like we don't usually look for options. We just go with the safe choice. We don't go with what we know. We don't want to, like at the bank thing. It just seems like this dangerous thing of like, not understanding what they're talking about. Just something that the men needs to do, or we just leave it to the bank advisor. They will know what we need to do. Also with investing, a lot of people then go to their bank, the one that they've been with for 15, 20, 30 years, and ask them how they should start investing. And then obviously the bank advisor is going to tell you something that is actually most lucrative to him, not necessarily to you, because he gets a commission from whatever he sells you. So it's really, really good to start, just educating yourself, learning, and then starting to become more confident in making the decisions yourself.
I like
go ahead, Tiffany. Your turn.
Okay. That's all right. I was going to say that I love this conversation. Just kind of a personal kind of reflection here. I come from a sort of background where I grew up with my dad. My dad was super frugal. Like when you think frugal, take that to the next level. Like my dad was like, it would count the pennies. It would, when we used to go food shopping, my dad would write a list and he would write the cost of that thing you're buying, like 52p, and it will say, bring my 3p change, that sort of thing. So I grew up in that, but I grew up around that. I grew up around like, my dad, credit card is bad, spend your own money. So it's been a whole journey for me, understanding that credit can be good as well. And just trying to change, I suppose, my kind of money identity. Yeah, because I think that can be quite hard. Because even now, I mean, I'm a super saver. Like I save a lot because that's again something I've taken from my dad. So I'm working on breaking this kind of myths around credit and not being too saving, that I don't enjoy myself, because I do struggle with that. I'm more that
guilty when you spend.
I think so, yeah. So I think a lot of that, like you said, I love what you said about just kind of reflecting on who you are and what's important to you. I've gone through that phase of wanting things on social media because it looks nice, but I'm now at the other end of I don't care anymore. So do you think a lot of it comes with confidence, or how do we suppose kind of build on this idea of knowing ourselves? Like, how do we know more of ourselves, know more of what's important to us, and know more of how we can, spend money or invest money or have a money relationship that's authentic? I don't know if you have any tips around that.
Yeah, a good exercise to do actually is, I don't know if you track your expenses or if you know exactly how much you're spending, but if you look back and you look at last month or the month before and you kind of like revisit your expenses and you look at what brought you actually the most joy, like what did you enjoy the most, what actually had an impact on how you felt long term, not just short term, not just like, short term happiness, but really what made you feel fulfilled as well. Because it's kind of like when you then do that and you start to look at your spending and you start to classify it in different categories and you start to see which category is actually most important to you, then you can start to shift your money around that, and you might realize that, okay, actually, I don't know, I'm just going to give an example. I'm someone who buys like takeout coffee a lot or something like that, but actually it doesn't really give me anything. Versus I would prefer to save a bit of that and then actually have a really nice dinner with my partner and really enjoy the evening, something like that. So kind of like changing things around and just understanding how your spending reflects who you are, and also it creates your day, right? Like you can basically choose what kind of day you have based on how you spend your money or how much money you have available. And then I think when it comes to guilt, that's something that women deal with a lot, and I've been like that as well. Like I'm also really good at saving, and I've gone through a transition where I was like, okay, actually, I don't need to. Why am I holding on to all this money? Like, why am I restricting myself from spending money on things that I would actually want to do? Because I feel like I need to save. And kind of, yeah, again, realizing what's important to you. But then also realizing, like, understanding that you spending money makes space for more money to come back to you, right? So that's kind of like the circle. Like, money is energy, money is flowing, money doesn't want to sit idle, and that's why when you invest it, it works, right? And that's how it's good. When it's sitting in your bank account over a certain amount, obviously you should have your savings, your emergency fund in your savings account. You should have multiple months of expenses saved. But anything above that is kind of like, what are you doing it for? So if you don't have a saving goal, if you don't save for a trip that you're going to be doing, if it's just there just because you don't allow yourself to spend, then I would look at that and kind of think, okay, what am I actually doing with this money? Like, what is it there for? Because money wants to be used. Money doesn't want to be just sitting around doing nothing. So yeah, I think that's how I would approach it.
I think for me as well, I like how you've talked about money giving you freedom as well. And I think that's a really nice perspective to think about it from. And that by doing some of the things that you're talking about, like investing, you can actually almost buy your own time to maybe not work as much as you and spend more of that time with your family. So just maybe some of your reflections on the freedom it's brought for you and what it's enabled you to do.
Yeah. A lot, actually. I mean, I've been like, now I work part-time because I have my daughter, but even before I had my daughter, I worked part-time already, because I was in a position financially where I could do that, which means I worked like 4 or 5 hours a day. The rest of the time I could spend surfing, doing stuff, enjoying my life. Traveling is a big one as well. Being flexible with my time. So I think for me, it's like the level of freedom, and that's just what's important to me, is the fact that I'm in control of my time. Like, I don't have a boss. I'm my own boss. I don't have to apply to a holiday or leave or anything like that. But that comes with responsibility, and it comes with you taking care of yourself and your finances so that you can actually take a holiday. Another example is, now I had the nursery integration for 2 weeks, and I took 2 weeks off from work. I mean, I didn't take off completely, but I wasn't focusing on trying to get new clients or anything like that. I was just working on my current clients and being there with my daughter, and that was it. And I felt fine doing it because I knew that my money is invested and it's working for me, and I'm actually making money even though I'm not working. So yeah, I think that's the level of freedom. And actually a good book for that, or talking about time, is Your Money or Your Life. And it talks about a concept called life energy, where what she's saying, and they are more on the frugalist side. They are more on that, like, which I don't 100% agree with, but that's a concept that I like from the book. Basically what they're saying is that when you go to work, you exchange your time for money, right? So now you have money, but then when you spend money, you effectively spend your time, because if you have to start thinking, okay, what is my time worth? Is this worth what I'm spending? Basically, like, is it worth for me to buy this and then work for 5 hours to get this? Or is it not worth that much for me and I don't want to spend that money? And then the same, once you then start investing, it becomes even more powerful, because now your money is worth even more, because you have to start thinking of, like, okay, if I would not spend the money but actually invest it, what can that be worth in 10, 15, 20 years, and what can I buy with that? So also a little bit the concept of delayed gratification versus like not buying something now, but then just waiting and investing it instead and having more time down the line. So it's kind of like, with these changes that you're doing and the fact that you're investing your money and you're growing your wealth, you effectively get days back during, like, later on in life. So that's how the concept of, like, money is time comes, like, what I came up with is kind of like, versus time is money, because time is money comes from the hustle culture, and I don't really subscribe to that. But it's just when you learn how to use your money, you can actually really buy yourself time, by either working less or taking a sabbatical or retiring earlier. And all of this is kind of like ties into having more time that you can then spend with your loved ones, do things you do things you love and enjoy, travel, work on a passion project, anything like that.
I love this. I love this. I think wow, I'm really enjoying this more than I thought I would. And I think you really know your stuff. I must say that. Because I think this whole idea of money is it's often a thing that traps people. And I love what you said earlier about women in relationships, even in stable relationships. You need to better watch your money, girl, because you know things happen. And I think sadly sometimes as women, because we're so emotionally, we kind of get caught up in the idea of, I'm not saying that anything wrong with love, right? I'm happily married myself. But it's just this idea of sometimes you just got to be a little bit wise, a little bit savvy, right? And I think that's very important because things happen. I mean, on a lighter note, I love watching like Tinder Swindler, Love Rats. I've exposed myself there on I don't know if you've seen that. Have you seen that, by the way, on Netflix?
No.
Tinder Swindler, yes.
Okay.
And
I think, yeah, because I think it's worth mentioning that, because what I'm seeing is, on the whole, there's a whole idea of like financial manipulation of typically more women, just because sometimes money and money can seem like a man thing. So some of these women, they come into this old thing from a vulnerable perspective. They think, oh, okay, maybe this guy is saying he's a millionaire, saying he's got money, so if I invest or give him what little money I have, he's promising me this kind of like secure future. And then they kind of go into that with this idea of they get more at the other hand. So I'm interested in like just how women are sometimes at a disadvantage because we think, oh, money's a man thing. Or this man will help me sort out my life and I'll be okay, or I'm married and he's managing the finances. So is there a way for women to navigate this, even in relationships? Is there a way to kind of not see it as, we're not saying there's nothing wrong with love, but is there, do you see what I mean? Because it's quite sensitive, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think so one thing is, if you don't want to say it from the perspective of like this relationship might not work out, you can also look at it like, what if he diseases, right? Because that's a possibility. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of like, so in theory, it's also what if the relationship doesn't work out, but if you don't want to say that, then just think of what if the person dies, that can happen. You just want to make sure that like I've seen it often enough where this happens and then you don't even know how many bank accounts there are. You don't even know where the money is. You don't even know what investments there are. You don't even know what these investments are. Like you don't know anything. And then suddenly, especially if you have kids, it becomes even more like serious. Suddenly you have to take the responsibility, but you have no idea how to do it. On top of that, you're dealing with grief and everything else. So kind of like I said, if you don't want to think this relationship might not work, think of that, because that's 100%. Like, we are all mortal. We're not going to live forever. This is a possibility, and that's just something to be aware of. And I think one way to do it is that I would always advise everyone to have their own bank account. I would advise to have a joint account, but you want to have your own bank account as well, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have to ask for money, or you feel like you're not spending your own money, or everything is bundled together. It's obviously a bit more difficult if you are not working, if you don't have an income. But actually, if you're not working and you don't have an income and you are the one taking care of the children, you should be paid for that, technically, right? Because that's money.
Amen.
It's true. Because as an example, the last it's like it's money that you're not spending on childcare, right? So that money should go to you, and that's kind of like and that's just things of like how you should think about money. And it's not always, I don't think it's always the role of the woman to take care of the kid. It's not always the role of the woman to take care of the house. It's just like, you are in a relationship, you have a child. If the husband or the partner is the one who wants to go to work because maybe also he's in a better position where he could get more money, he has a better job, anything like that, fine, he can go ahead and do his career, but then he needs to reimburse you or pay you for what you're doing, right? It doesn't and that's how you get out of this like dependency. So yeah,
I really like that. And I think that's I think as well, not only are you saving them childcare, but you're also disadvantaging your own earning potential in the future by having that gap. So yeah, absolutely, completely agree with that. I was going to ask, what's your number one tip for people to get started? So they've listened to this, they're interested, and they don't know how to take the first step.
To
On
do
the
my
course.
course. Free
Oh, yeah,
course.
of course. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a revamp of it, I think, because I did it in January, and I feel like we all grow, right? So I've like my writing changes, my messaging changes, how I speak changes. Like I think the person I was in January when I was writing, I was holding back a bit more. Now I'm much more blunt, much more like in your face. So I'm gonna update the course, but for now, just the course is on my website. So I would do the course. I do free masterclasses regularly. So just use it, like joining my mailing list helps to stay up to date with that. And then I also post on LinkedIn regularly, and you can also get a lot of content from that. Like I'm usually not holding back because the reason I started this is because I want to have more women who actually start investing and do this. Obviously, if you start working with me and you, decide to invest in me, then it goes faster and I can help you to get there faster. But you can also just consume my content and actually get the confidence through that and start doing it yourself. So those would be my starting points.
I love that.
Cool.
And I think you also mentioned about where people can find you online. Are you mainly on LinkedIn or you also use Instagram?
I have Instagram, but I might just redo it because it's
Okay.
I don't like it.
Okay.
Alright.
Same with us. We're more on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Can I ask one final question around things like you talked about the different platforms and stuff like that people can invest through? What about things like Moneybox? Do you have that in Barcelona? So that's like just an app on your phone, and I think it's similar, but I don't know because I think they're the kind of.
Is it at the bank or is it what did I do? I don't know.
So,
Is that the name? Moneybox.
Yeah, Moneybox. So it's an investment platform. Are you Googling at the moment?
Yes.
So yeah, it's a platform that you would use on your phone. And I feel like there are a lot of women who might jump in via something like that because it seems familiar. It's been advertised on TV, but I just didn't know whether that is a legit way. I think do pay into a fund on something like that, but I don't know whether in terms of fees they would be better with I don't know, a different type of platform.
I don't know Moneybox, but my broker. So I just need to drink some. No, I'm good. My broker is also on my phone. Like I don't have there's different offers. Obviously, there's different brokers, different accounts that you can use. I have one that I use on my phone, which has pros and cons because I can just literally, like any other app, I can just open it and I can see the balance of my account and I can see how much my investments have made or lost. So if you are just starting out, might not be the best way for you because you might get nervous actually. You might just check all the time. I remember when I downloaded the app or opened my account and I started investing, I would like check every day. And I'm like, oh God, okay, great. Oh no, okay, like constantly. So, but yeah, when you do like, basically what you call this is a broker, right? Like you need to have a broker in order to invest. And what I would look at is the fees because now there are so many brokers that you don't have to pay a lot of fees. Usually they are for free actually. And then transaction fees should be really, really low as well. When you have saving plans, so when you have automated investments, they are also for free most of the time. Then you want to make sure that legally the investments belong to you. So that's the case with most brokers, but just double check. So just look at the legal structure and make sure that even though they kind of like are the interface or the front of your investments, the investments are actually yours there. So if something would happen to this broker, if it's a new app or anything like that, or something would happen to this company, you don't lose your investments. They're still yours because they're registered under your name. And then a general one is just customer service, like, are they easy to reach and stuff like that. So yeah, and looking at reviews. But it's funny because I often get asked like, oh yeah, I don't know how to choose a broker. I don't know what to do, but that's like the smallest thing. Like it seems much more than it is. Like it seems scary because that's in the end what you use to actually invest. But when you look at a few small things, then it's like comparing, different types of apples. They're all doing the same thing at the end of the day.
I think that's really helpful, because I think that is probably a barrier to people actually making that first step. Like, I don't know how to pick them, but to understand there's not really that much between them, and actually just maybe look at the fees and then go for it.
Exactly.
So yeah, also, definitely. Go ahead.
If you think of think of the UK, obviously, like you have the ISA, right? So you want to make sure that you work with someone. If you don't have any investments yet and you want to set that up first, you work with someone who offers this kind of service, so that you have tax-free investments, basically, which you can use for your retirement, which is amazing. I wish I had that. But, so yeah, that's also something to look at and something to be aware of.
Okay. I do have one last question, which I think maybe a lot of ambitious mothers on this podcast can relate to. Are there any money habits or little disciplines or things you're showing your daughter, or you think you will show your daughter?
Nice question.
Young? Yeah, because I think about it, like, I don't want my children to have my financial psychology imprint. Nothing. I want it to be different, and it's not taught in school. So is there anything that you're going to do with your daughter at this age or as she's getting older to make sure she has a different journey? Yeah.
So one thing that I started, but it was more like, I didn't plan this, but we have a little piggy bank. Like, she got a piggy bank when she was born, and randomly when she finds money in the house, I
like that.
taught her to put it into her piggy bank, basically. So whenever she has coins, she puts it inside. She obviously doesn't understand yet what it is, but that will come. One thing that I'm planning to do, or I'm doing consciously, and that's more on my side, is actually how I talk about money in front of her. So not saying things like, we can't afford this is too expensive, blah, blah, blah. Like, anything kind of like that would make her feel like it's out of reach or it's expensive, because that's what happens. I saw something in the shop and I was just like, it wasn't the fault of the mom. This is something we say, but then the kid wanted something and she's like, no, we can't afford this, it's too expensive. And I was like, oh no, like, because it's just like, we can say it in a different way. We can try to say something of like, no, I don't know, you have something like this at home, we don't need this now, or whatever. There's different ways of framing it. You don't have to talk about the money aspect. You can talk about why she's not getting this particular thing for any reason. She doesn't have to get everything anyway, but it's kind of like, I think that's more from my perspective, or like that's more my role of how I want to talk about money, and also how my partner and I talk about money, if we talk about money. But then in general, I actually do like to talk about money. I think that's another thing, because in a lot of households, that's going to be once she's a bit older, but in a lot of households, we don't talk about money at all. And that's also not right. That's like hiding how much you earn, for example, in front of your child, or how much you pay, or something like that. I think that just creates this feeling of like money is something you shouldn't be talking about. And that's exactly why we are where we are today, and why people don't know much about how to manage their money and how to deal with money, is because we don't talk about it enough. So having the conversation.
Thank you.
I would say.
Thank you. It's a good answer.
I also, one more thing, sorry. I saw a really cute exercise for how to teach kids about the power of compound interest and also saving and so on. So basically, when they're a bit older, and if you have a garden, not everyone has a garden, but what they were saying, and you can think of it as with something else, but you could give your child or gift your child a fruit plant, or like a vegetable plant, basically. They can then go ahead and sell the fruits or the vegetables that they get from that plant, and then they get another fruit plant, and that's how they kind of like grow their garden with the money that they make from the fruits or the whatever they're harvesting, basically, right? So they have one plant first, then they sell, let's say tomatoes. They have a tomato plant, they sell the tomatoes, they get another tomato plant. That tomato plant makes more tomatoes. They sell that, they get another plant, and then that's how they keep growing their tomatoes, basically. And that's the same that happens when you start investing and you reinvest the money.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been amazing. I feel like people have learned so much, and we'll make sure there's kind of a link to your LinkedIn. so that people can find you and find out about your course as well. Because I've done the 7-day email course, and fabulous, really, really great. And I enjoyed your masterclass so much as well. So I've learned a lot from you, and I feel like our listeners definitely will have done as well. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
Definitely. You will see me on your course. Don't worry. I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.